Well, welcome back to the Communication Mastery Podcast with me, Mark Berlinson. This is where we unleash the power of understanding to build bridges and to demolish boxes, because we understand that communication is the soil in which teamwork grows, and we all need stronger communication these days. And so we want to grow our communication mastery together. And today I want to talk a little bit about lessons from running communication workshops. I've done a bunch of these recently, and it's really got me thinking about what do you get from a communication workshop. I've been really impressed and also slightly surprised, to be honest, with the impact that a workshop can have on a group of people in an organization. And that's the first lesson that I actually wanted to highlight, because in a workshop we have a great deal of surprise. When people take their profile, they very often say, hey, I see how communication IQ really gets me. It's really captured how I'm wired or who I am. But then in a workshop, they start to see how it also captures the people around them, the colleagues at work, the people that they serve with in a non-profit ministry. That kind of group dynamic. There's a lot of surprise of, oh, that's you. Or, oh, I see you do that all the time. Or that's why we have so much struggle with this or that. And so there's a great deal of surprise, those aha moments, because the communication styles are bringing breakthroughs in people's interactions where suddenly they understand each other at a whole new level with the science behind it. It's not just a personality issue. They understand that each of them is wired uniquely. And once you understand the unique wiring, now you can figure out how to make this work for whatever goal you're aiming for, whatever project you're working on, whatever result that you want to achieve. And so I love it when I see faces light up around the room as people recognize each other as we describe the 7 communication styles. A lot of surprise, but as each person recognizes facets of their own style, they also see in one another what they can bring to the team. Great deal of surprise is great. And of course, the second thing that comes directly behind that is an enthusiasm. I was doing a workshop just this last weekend before recording this episode, and just seeing the folks together grasping, hey, this could really make a difference. And there's this huge kind of groundswell of enthusiasm amongst the whole team as they recognize that the more they could learn the 7 communication languages, the way they can apply the communication IQ system, looking at the filter question that each language has, looking at the need from others, making sure that they're meeting that need rather than starting from zero in their interactions. It really makes a difference. And so there's that enthusiastic embrace of the 4 keys, as we call them, the 4 success keys to being able to communicate more effectively. And it was no exception with this group I was working with at the weekend. It's a little bit like the appetizer at the restaurant really increases your anticipation and your enthusiasm for the main course, for the entree when it comes. And I could see them really grasping the benefit that they could receive from learning this together. And by the end of the workshop, there was such an energy in the room. They really believed that this was going to make a difference for their future together. The third thing I've seen more often than not actually in these workshops is an increase of curiosity. And I guess that follows the enthusiasm, doesn't it? When you say this could really help, then the next question that generally comes to mind is, so what do I need to do next? Or how can I grow this? Or how can I develop my understanding? How can I go deeper? Of course, some of the communication languages are more wired for that curiosity than others. And so it varies around the room how much curiosity each person expresses. But everybody, either through enthusiasm or through curiosity, wants to take it another step from the workshop level to personal application, to specific working relationships. And as people internalize the specific ways that each language works, there's always that curiosity of, let me try this and see if it will work, or let me use different words or do different actions in my next interaction with that person to see if the result is different. There's that curiosity that wants to explore, how do I apply this now that I'm beginning to grasp it? It's kind of like when you learn to drive. Do you remember learning to drive? To start with, it's really daunting, but after a while, you're like, hey, I think I'm going to go for another drive and see if I can apply what I've learned. And then there's the whole road of adventure ahead of you that opens up because of that curiosity. Some of the questions that I've been asked in the workshops recently, there was one particular guy, I think the influencer language was his lowest. He was a high contemplator, if I recall, and so he's very philosophical, very intellectual, but he said to me, well, so how do I increase my influencer score? His influencer score wasn't bad. It was in the 30s as his seventh language, which is kind of high for a seventh language. But he said to me, so how can I increase my score here? How can I bring this language more into my interaction? Because he could see it would be valuable for him in his line of business. And I said, well, the best way to increase your score in a language that's unfamiliar is to hang around with people and interact with people who have that language as a strong language. So we asked for a show of hands around the room. Who's got the influencer language above 50? Who here has it as their first or their second language? And there were 3 or 4 folks there who he wouldn't normally hang out with because they're wired differently. But he made a conscious decision. I'm going to spend more time with these people. I want to connect with them. Incidentally, that's one of the essential qualities that the contemplator language has to work at in order to become more healthy. And so he's taken on the project of connecting with some of these high influencers to see how it can benefit him in his lowest language, with the interactions with his clients, with the interactions with his staff, and so on. Another question that came up, and this kind of relates a little more to romantic relationships, I guess. Somebody said to me, well, if my primary language is my spouse's 7th language, do we need counseling? There was a bit of a laugh around the room because everyone was getting along well by this point. But my answer to that was no. You only need counseling if you decide to only hold on to your attributes and disregard your spouse's attributes. What's happened is that opposites have attracted, and you two have so much to offer each other because your strengths are different. And then I could see a sense of relief and relaxation come over the person's face as they realized that actually in picking their spouse, they'd maybe unwittingly chosen somebody who could really complete them in ways that they wouldn't be able to on their own. And they set out, after a short discussion in a break time, they set out to really learn what each other brought to their relationship that the other could benefit from, how they could strengthen each other. Turning differences into strengths is one of the key things that I love to do with clients because I see such fruit from it. And I see not just marriages thriving, but business teams also, as you recognize that maybe the manager's got one strength and the person they're supervising has a different strength. And once they learn to recognize those and put them together, the multiplication of their ability and their potential is really rewarding. And then there was a third question. This wasn't the same guy I talked about earlier, but somebody else who was high in the contemplator language said, how can I learn to connect more when contemplator is my highest language? This person, if I recall, had all 3 of the thinking languages high in their profile, and everything else kind of took a back seat. And so they were struggling to say, well, that tends to isolate me from other people if I'm not careful. I don't want that. This is all about communication after all. But if I'm wired to think more than to feel or to act, what can I do to connect more with other people? And I thought for a moment, and because they had all 3 of the thinking languages high, I said, well, maybe you can first ask your other thinking languages to create a plan for you, or to be more resourceful about ways to communicate and to connect with others who maybe are more action-based. It'll be uncomfortable for you to start with because you're used to just sitting back and not engaging with others as much, perhaps, as you could because of the thinking wiring. You're very valuable to them because of the depth of your understanding and the intelligence and philosophical nature of your inquisitive wiring. But if you make a plan with your shaper language, or if you learn to be more resourceful, learn to draw on the resources around you in those other people with your producer language, not just your contemplator, then those three languages that are all thinking languages can work together to help you build bridges. And then it struck me that that same principle can apply to all of our profiles. You can look at those 7 voices in your head and see which one you want to call on. A little bit like you're leading a team meeting, but it's a team meeting within yourself. Which language do you need for this setting? Which language would be beneficial for that goal you want to reach? And you can call on that language, even if it's the quietest language in your mixture, and call on that language to come and bring its strengths, bring its passions, bring its skills to the table for you personally so that you can connect with other people. So those are some of the positive lessons I've learned from the communication workshops recently. There's surprise as people discover that they're wired in a way that's beneficial. There's enthusiasm as they see that understanding the communication IQ system more deeply can really strengthen their teamwork. And then there's also curiosity. What do I do next? Where do I go from here to really take advantage of this? But then the fourth thing I've learned, and it's important that we look at this as well, sometimes there's resistance because adapting to others is a learned behavior. It's something that we have to work at in order to make it effective. And it can be challenging because if I've lived for a long time where mostly I've only been using my primary language in my communication styles, and I've neglected the others, then it's going to be a bit of a challenge to learn to draw on those in the way that I just talked about. And it can seem too difficult to switch into another style. That's why we call them languages, because it's a little bit like choosing to learn a foreign language. When you first start learning Spanish or Mandarin, it feels completely impenetrable because it's so different from what you're used to. It's so different from what you've learned throughout your life. But once you start the journey, and particularly if you find someone to coach you and help you on that journey, then you can fairly quickly grasp some of the basics of a language you didn't already know or you hadn't already recognized. And then you can begin to apply those, and gradually and then increasingly rapidly, it becomes a language you can access as you need to. So it's good to overcome resistance, because practice makes progress. And as we do that, then we'll find that there's a great benefit from learning to build bridges and to adapt to one another, or to just adapt to which language is going to be beneficial. You're only living 1/7 of your potential if you're living only in your primary language. And learning to speak all 7 more fluently is always going to benefit you. So here's a thought. Because of the benefits of a workshop, I had this idea that if you have a business or an organizational team, maybe it's a non-profit team, and you think this would be valuable to them, then send me a message on my website. Go to the contact form at markburlinson.com. Send me a message and say, hey, I think my business would benefit from this. Let's see if we can book a workshop. Or my nonprofit team could really be helped by you coming along and doing this. We could do it by Zoom if you're too far away. And if your business books a workshop with me, then I've got a bonus gift for you as the person who made that introduction. So consider that today. I think you'd benefit tremendously from a workshop in your organization, and I'd love to help you with it. That's all for this week, but we'll see you again next week.